everybody. And okay, so let me go through and start this. I'm going to start off by giving, this is basically one of two parts on the Chief Judge presentation. William will be doing the second part after I finish my first part. And it's really a helicopter overview on what's involved with being a Chief Judge. I will be publicizing my email address and also my phone number for anybody in Ireland that wants to talk to me afterwards, a bit more information, and I can share some more slides, etc., and some other files. So don't worry about taking too many notes at the moment. This is just a flying overview on what's involved with being a Chief Judge. So the first thing is to know your team. And the team are voting judges, tiebreaker judges, speech timers, and of course, ballot counters. And in most cases for the club and the area, it's 5 judges you should be looking for, although you have flexibility with regards to the club. You can go down to 3 if it's necessary, but it's not recommended. It's better to get 5, maybe borrow from some other club, etc., etc. And then 7 judges for the others. And then the tiebreaker is only 1. Speech timers is recommended for 2, but also have backups for all of these roles as well, because you never know. So that's why I depict a team of 14, 15 people, because believe you me, you will need them. Okay. Now, just a slide here. I won't go into it too much. I've just got recommended times for understanding the rules and talking to the ballot counters. You don't have to adhere directly to that, but just to remind you at the very end, the select and brief of judges should be done at least 1 day in advance of the actual Zoom contest, because there will be questions and answers from your judges. So it's always good to have the time for that. Who's eligible? Well, any member that's not is a paid member of your club can be a club contest judge. And any paid member with 6 months membership of the club, and also that has completed the competent communicator 6 or Patrick's level 2 is also a good person to have at your area contest. And the reason for those stipulations is primarily to make sure that you have actually got an experienced Toastmaster doing the judges, okay? Again, I will share that slide again with people afterwards. The eligibility is primarily this form that you get every judge to fill in, and there is an electronic version of that now available, which I'll talk about shortly. Which you must complete. Every judge must complete this form and return it to the chief judge well in advance of the actual contest. And you're taking the word out the person who wants to do the judging. And I would like to see this edited slightly to include all contests together, but for now it's just one contest at a time. There is another way of checking the eligibility, but it's primarily mostly for contestants, and that's on the website of TI. And that's what it kind of looks like. It gives you a background to the person involved. And then we talk about the timers and the counters. So the second tip I want to give everybody is for every chief judge, is to know the rules. And that is to download the latest speech contest rule book. I'm not going to go through it now, but it's very self-explanatory. There's lots of information in there, and it's worth reading through that. And it indicates what are the changes from previous years as well, or from the last year, I should say. Then online effective
Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Should the slides be moving? Because we're still seeing Know Your Team.
Okay, they should be moving. Anybody not seeing the upside slides?
You've only seen Know Your Team, the one with the people on it.
Okay, so it's not coming across. Okay, maybe it's the version. I'm going to kill it because there's no point. I'll talk let me just do one thing here, and it might be that the slides need an updated version software. Just a second now. I'll just open that. Bear with me. One thing we should have checked. My fault for not checking that. And speech contests. There we go. And admin forms, chief judge.
We could see the deck. They just weren't. The slides weren't moving, but we could see all the different.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can open it up with more up-to-date PowerPoint, the online version. Open. I'm going to see if this works now. Just go back. Apologies about that. Share screen. Can I see if you can see this one? And okay, I've got two open, so let me just close one. Okay.
I now see online effective team briefing.
Okay, so that's the online version of PowerPoint. I'm going to make sure I start sharing this one. Okay. You can see that one. Can you see the one that's there now?
It says online effective team briefing is what we can see.
Oh, that's the older one.
Tom, I ask, do you have two screens by chance?
I have, yeah. So the
I
other
think
one
you-
is now
I
the
think-
other one is now
I think-
showing just.
Yeah, I think you may be demonstrating to us the Microsoft PowerPoint rather than the actual, whatever that's called, the slideshow. So I think your slideshow may be on the other screen.
Okay. Stop sharing there for a second and go back again. Show this one. Can that be seen?
So we can see your mouse now. Yes. Yes, we see it now.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see the next slide there with Judge?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're just talking about judges, quickly going through it. The qualities of a judge, they're all listed there on the different qualities of a judge that you would expect to have. And can you see the screen moving now? Can you see challenges? The challenge is objectivity and judging.
Yes, we can see that, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's fine. At least it's moving. And there's barriers for objectivity as well that people should know about. They're in the rules book anyway, about these barriers for objectivity and misconceptions, etc. And then materials. Now on the rule book, there is some bad information as regards links to the information you can get. So I've changed it slightly. www.toastmasters.org resources. And depending on the contest, you need to type in the kit name. So International Speech Contest, Evaluation Speech Contest Kit. Funnily enough, humorous speech contest and table topics contest don't have the word kit on the link, okay? But the information that's on page 27 and 28 is not correct. It doesn't work, okay? I will be talking to TI about that. Also, the additional resources, the links on that are incorrect as well. So below it here, you can see the correct links for asking questions, FAQs, and then the tutorials. There is actually online tutorials for judges, and it's always recommended that you send all the judges through that tutorials. So again, they were incorrect on the rules book, which I'm going to try and get changed very shortly. This is just an example of the judges guide and ballot, which primarily works for the humorous speech, the international speech, and indeed the table topics is very similar. Content, delivery, and language are the three headings on that. The different one then is for the evaluation contest, which has four different headings. And I've summarized these here, where you see the contest type has got content, delivery, and language, and the total points for each one. Whereas the evaluation contest is a different set of headings, analytical, recommend, technique, etc. Just be aware, whichever contest you're being the chief judge on, that there are differences on the evaluation, but the other three are very, very similar. Completed ballots, we'll talk about this in a minute, but make sure to print and get every judge to make sure that they print and sign their name. This is one of the reasons why a lot of judges' ballots are not actually accepted. Also, to detach the bottom portion and send it electronically to the chief judge. And William will talk a little bit more about that. The difference between the tiebreaker slip and the normal ballot is as follows. The normal regular ballot is just showing first, second, and third place, whereas the tiebreaker shows all places, right up as far as the 10th place, if there's 10 contestants. It has to put down the names for everybody in order of what that tiebreaker thinks one came first, second, and third. So that's the main difference between the ballots of the two. Now we talk about the timer. This is one of the recommended cards that you have as a timer that the timer uses in the contest. And that's basically used until a color light is turned on. In other words, for the first 3 to 5 minutes, depending on which the contest. Then these are some recommended cards that you can use: green, yellow, and red. And it's better to have the whole screen and not you appearing as the timer in, or the timer not appearing in it. So the best way to do that is to cover the camera either by cloth, which is what I do, or a piece of tape, or a purpose card that you can buy. But it's mainly to cover yourself, and therefore then the color just comes backwards, and I can just demonstrate that later on in the Q&A. And obviously then the timer has a tally sheet that they keep a record of the contestants. And if you have 2 timers, one of the timers actually does this in coordination with the other timer, who does nothing but time the actual contest. But it's better maybe to have 2, so that at least you have a good record. And then the counter has just their tally form, and they just use that form, and there's a lot of information on the rules book about how to fill that form in. And that's it. That's my presentation. So I hand over to William for the second part of the presentation. William, take it away.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Tom. And I will just see if we have success with the screen share. Share. Okay, hopefully you can all see this. Does it change? Yeah. Perfect.
Good.
First of all, I would like to thank Tom, because he produced these slides. I didn't have time, and so at least the theme is going to be consistent. Now, what I would like to do, and I think is most useful, is to talk about the practicalities of being a chief judge, especially on Zoom, in the Zoom era, and some of my experiences. But I think first of all, I'd like to say, and I think this is very important, is the chief judge is the person who's in charge. They have the final say. And I think Toastmasters is obviously a leadership organization. And I think maybe some people are slightly uncomfortable with this, but the buck stops at the chief judge. There's not necessarily a right answer. The rule book is obviously a book of rules, but it can be interpreted. And the chief judge's job is to try and make the rules work in the situation that is presented, to be as fair as possible. But they ultimately have to make decisions and take responsibility for things. And this is quite important, because the practicalities, especially in the Zoom era, of getting ballots to the counters and having all counted up, can be quite complicated. In the good old days, you know, they just put their hands in the air, the paper slips were collected, and everything was fine. In Zoom, it can be slightly more complicated. I think the preferred way to do it, certainly at the higher up levels of district, we use WhatsApp, and ideally they would take a photograph of the ballot paper, ideally all signed and stuff. Tom discussed this earlier, so you just take a picture of the bottom part of the ballot. Now this is where it starts getting slightly complicated. So I'll start at the district level, because that is the most difficult one. Usually we set up WhatsApp groups containing the chief judge and the counters for every single one. And so you have like judge 1, judge 2, judge 3, all the way to say judge 12. So you have all these different WhatsApp groups. It can get very complicated, but I think most of the people watching this are more worried about clubs, area, and possibly division. So possibly at division level, you want to have different WhatsApp groups with different judges. In the club levels, where I know, usually when I'm doing club contests or area contests, usually I know people, and I'm quite laid back about the whole thing. And, you know, it's very important to make the contest work and work smoothly. I usually just say to people, look, just send me 1, 2, and 3 on the Zoom chat, the private chat. Some people find that highly egregious, and they worry that it will, somebody will accidentally publish it in the chat and everyone will see it. That's never happened. I must have done 50 contests or something on Zoom, and I've never seen that go wrong. Generally, people are quite good at private chats, and they, write snidey comments about people and things like that. So they're quite good at hiding things. And the good thing about the Zoom chat is you don't have to worry about WhatsApp. Some people may not use WhatsApp. Some people's WhatsApp might not work. Some people may want to email the ballots. The most important thing for the chief judge when they get the ballots is they have to get all the ballots in quickly and get them counted. If this process takes half an hour, it just screws up the whole process. So I think it's very, very important that the contest works smoothly and it's not unnecessarily held up by technicalities. Obviously, it's a counting exercise. It's not particularly complicated. You know, all the judges, so, you know, if there's 5 judges, 7 judges, they all have to complete a ballot. They have to have first place, second place, third place. The tiebreaker judge will put all of the contestants in order, so they've got a much bigger job. And the counters, usually there's 2 counters for the contest, so one will act as a sort of witness to the other one, because you don't want to get into a situation where only one person is sent the results, so they could, you know, ultimately, you know, fiddle the results basically. So you want at least 2 counters. I think the actual rules say that you only need 2 area or above. I can't quite remember. Interestingly enough, if you look at the rules up to area level, because remember, during club level and area level, you quite often have problems getting people, and this is another thing that's quite important, I think. You may not have enough people, you may not have enough judges, you may have not enough counters. The rules say that ideally up to area level there'll be 1 person for each role, but that's only, and the words are, where practicable. Okay, so technically speaking, and I've done this before, like I've been the contest chair and the chief judge in the contest. Technically speaking, 1 person could do the whole bloody contest according to the rules. You know, up to area level, if they really, you know, if it was really distressed and nobody wanted to, you know, step up to do the roles. But ideally, you would have 2 counters and a chief judge, and they would be moved into a room after the contest by the Zoom master, and they would all supervise the counting of the votes, which is why, and this is where it gets very difficult, if it's done on WhatsApp, you know, who do you send the results to? You know, so the results are sent to chief judge, counter 1, counter 2, and then everybody would then count it up and then see if the results match, and you get this big problem, you know, if it doesn't match, and then people are going backwards and forwards. But ultimately, the chief judge has to make the situation work. It's sometimes you have to make allowances for, you know, problems that may come up. So that's pretty much the counters tally sheet. It's very simple, really. You just count up the votes, and it's all done on points, basically. I think everybody probably knows this already. So first place is 3 points, second place is 2 points, third place is 1 point. Person with the highest points gets first place. Very simple, really. Now, the counters also must submit their timing sheets as well, and that is this sheet here. Ideally, and certainly at division and district level, you have to have 2 timers. But you know, in clubs, sometimes you don't have the luxury of having all of the roles in the rule book, but ideally you'd always have 2 timers. So all of the timers, the 2 timers would obviously time the speakers, and they would write their times down. There is disqualification time. So for instance, in the speech contest, if it's 7:31, they're disqualified. But the timers don't make this decision themselves. They just write the times down. The timesheets are given to the chief judge, and the chief judge will look at the times. And if there is a disqualification, then they will be disqualified. There is a new rule, and I don't really know how this applies. This came in this year, that the timers don't consider fractions of a second. I've never seen that being, I can't see how people would have a stopwatch that's so precise they'd measure fractions of a second. I guess when, if there's 2 timers and one was 7:30 and one was 7:31, usually I take an average, and obviously that would be 7:30 and a half, which would be a fraction of a second, but you'd round that up, I guess, to 7:31. So I don't see where that comes in. So yes, it's very simple. You add up the times and you disqualify the contestants if they're over time. So that's pretty much my part of the presentation. It's very simple, really. All you do is you try and have a system that works so everybody gets the ballots. WhatsApp seems to be the way forward. Not everybody has WhatsApp. Same with the timer sheets. They go through to the chief judge, and you write the results down, and you find out who wins, basically. Who comes first, second, and third. So that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William and Tom, for setting out what the chief judge, what the role of the chief judge. I think there'll be lots of questions afterwards, but let's move swiftly on to the next two important roles. That's of the contest chair. So Olga and Nigel, we're looking forward to hearing from you both.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I think we're going to ask the Zoom master to spotlight us, if you can. That's brilliant. And Nigel as well, please. So while we're getting Nigel spotlighted, well, the two of us together, if not, we can just speak independently. Anyway, while this is happening, now we're going to go for something completely different, because we've done the role of chief judge, which is, you know, a lot of rules and regulations. There's rules and regulations around ours as well, but I think we have a little room for a little bit more lightheartedness. So we believe as contests, it's kind of like the Oscars for Toastmasters. It's a big deal. And the role of contest chair, I'm sure Nigel will agree, is the best gig in town.
Absolutely.
So we're going to start now, and we're going to introduce each other. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Nigel. So he is the president of Birmingham Bullring Speakers and PMI UK Changers. He's an active Toastmaster for almost 4 years now, and he's aiming for the big accolade this year, Distinguished Toastmaster. So by day, he's a project manager with a tech company based in, wait for it, Silicon Valley in California. Thank God for virtual life. And they deal in telecoms, energy renewals, and utilities. And by night, he enjoys anything to improve his personal well-being, lives in semi-rural Rochester with his partner Sue, dog, and some goldfish. Nigel?
Thanks so much there, Olga. And let me tell you a little bit about Olga this evening. So Olga's plan A is actually to pen a winning speech, but making no inroads in that much, her plan B is to step into the role of contest chair at the next International Toastmasters convention. I think it's because it's in a very luxurious part of the world, I think there, Olga. Now, by day, Olga is a nutritionist working as a clinical trial mentor where she helps her clients make lifestyle changes. Now, she doesn't tell me what she does by night, but I know she does tell me she's terrorized by 3 teenagers in a home city of Dublin. So that's Olga for us this evening. So Olga, what are we going to talk about now, and how are we going to do it?
Okay, we're going to start by giving you the reason for this training. So the reason for tonight's session is to pique interest in the role of contest chair. The reason for the training is for District 71 to gather a stellar pool of contest judges and contest chairs, which we are part of. Now, the learning outcomes for tonight's session is to give you a taster of the contest chair role, to show you the importance of this role, and most important, to drive home to you, the most important part of any contest is the contestant. And we're hoping to capture that magic today. Why us? Both of us have done this role at various levels, and what's more, we absolutely love it. So if no one steps up to be trained, you're going to be stuck with us, because we're going to carve up the district between us, and we'll be at every contest. So to help us out, you need to sign on. We aren't doing a PowerPoint, so you're going to be looking at us like in a contest. We're going to present the session as a sort of a contest itself, and we're going to look at the 4 areas of before the contest, a contestant briefing, during the contest, and then sort of interview and the results. So Nigel, over to you with what happens before the contest.
Well, thank you, Olga. And what I want to do now, first of all, just cover 3 basic points of things before the contest. Now, quick question to the audience here. You can type something in chat, or you can just come off mute and just answer the question. But what do people think is the pivotal part of a contest? Anybody got any ideas about what the most important element of the contest is?
Organisation.
Organisation is a really good one. Thank you for that. Any other suggestions?
Timeliness.
Timeliness.
The
All great
contestant.
suggestions. Yeah. Getting people signed up to take part. That's really, really close. Yeah. Enjoyment. Absolutely. It's about having fun. But fundamentally, the answer I really was looking for, it's really about the contestants. It's really about them. And the ability before the contest to reach out to them, recognise their achievements to date, get them to step up, to take part in a contest. It takes a lot of grit, guts and perseverance. So it's really about that particular individual. Now, the second part, and Tom's touched on this already, is the rule book, and there is a lot in it. And I'm not going to go through any of the summary of this particular detail, but I know Tom signposted you to wait and get those particular kits from. I would say, please do read it, because it does year on year change for subtle things. So please take stock of the latest version of that. The other thing you really need to do before the contest is to send out those eligibility forms and also the bio forms. So the eligibility forms are important because, again, as Tom's touched on, you've got to make sure that the contestants are valid to take part in a certain contest. Now, I think for international speech only, you do have to be at least level 2 pathways. I think the others are fairly open, but in that you want to make sure they're a paid up member, in good standing with their club, and they've signed and sent that to you. The bio form is vitally important because you want to get to know something about the speaker, and Olga will touch on this when she talks about the post-speech interview. That's really important. Now, the one thing that I haven't touched on, and again, Tom touched on it, I think, before, about when do you do the briefings? Well, we're going to come on to that right now. And Olga, can you just take us through that process, please?
I would love to, Nigel. So the briefing, it depends. You can do it online or you can do it in person. So if you're at a club level, it's usually done in person these days, and you can do it just before the contest. But as you go higher levels, a Zoom call would be much better. And what's important during that process is to make sure all the forms are back, and to just remind contestants, if they haven't submitted anything yet, that there's plenty of time. And also, as Nigel stressed, the bio form is really important. People forget that. The eligibility, we can get that, but the bio form is crucial for the fun part of the contest. Now, during a contest briefing, I'll make sure, I'll sort of mention the rule book. I'm not going to expect them to go home and read it. It is at home, and I'm sure all the chief judges have read it inside out. The first thing that I like to do is determine the speaking order, because if I'm online, unfortunately, unlike the Zoom master, I am woeful at sharing screens, but I have to do this bit because we have a Google randomizer, which is fantastic. So you stick all the names of the contestants in, press random, and it randomizes them. And the impressiveness of all that takes away from my clunkiness as regards to screen sharing. So the contestants are delighted with that. So we have the speaking order. We'll do a quick overview of the contest. Essentially, I want to make them feel comfortable when they're there. So I will explain to them, look, when you come on, I'm going to do a quick kind of, ask them, can you see and hear me? Can you confirm this? To which they will answer. I'll ask them to pin the timer. Just letting them know that those are the points that I'm going to be doing as soon as they come on stage before their speech. If there's any audio visual they have that they need to test, especially if we're online, to go ahead and do it in this briefing session. We'll go through the timing now. What's very important here is do have a timer present so that they can demonstrate to the contestants how it's going to be done. I've been at a contest at area level and they were using cards, and then we're used to the Zoom ones with the virtual backgrounds, but we don't want any surprises on the night. I mean, most people are expecting Zoom backgrounds, so if it's a card, they want to know about it. The timing, explained to them, it's from the first verbal or obvious non-verbal gesture, and that's very important that they don't stand there thinking about speech and then fidget, because the timing is going to start. And then the introductions, which everybody knows, but you might have a new contestant, so it's name, I'm wondering, name, speech title, and name. Very important bit is to confirm the speech titles and also the names of the contestants. I've often had very difficult names, and it's lovely just to ask them, how would you like me to pronounce this? You want to get it right on the day. I'll go through disqualifications. I'm not going to go into the details now, but they involve timing, originality, and reference to the material of another contested speech. We'll go through protests and what they're limited to, and I explain that the only people who can actually make protests are the contestants and the voting judges. The contest chair can't, the chief judge can't, and audience members can't. There is the tech issues if you're doing a Zoom contest. Now, they're very detailed. I even have trouble with them. So when I was doing sort of a higher level contest briefing, I actually asked the chief judge, they're very good at all that detail, to come in and explain what happens if there's tech problems. And they do it beautifully, better than I ever would. And everyone's always delighted to help when you're contest chair. And most important, I think, at this meeting, it's to bring in energy, enthusiasm. This is a big deal for the contestants, you know, as Nigel said, you know, they've come a long way. And, you know, this needs to be recognized. They're the stars of the show, even though we want to be. But anyway, so Nigel, over to you for during the contest.
Thank you so much there, Olga. And just to pick up on one point you mentioned about the names of the speakers, to get that right, as well as the speech title. That's important, of course, for the speech certificates that we need to give out later in the contest as well. And the pronunciation obviously is vitally key. Now, as I mentioned before, it really is about the contestants. And the way I've often done this role is to make the contestants, as they prepare to speak, feel as comfortable as possible. Having been a contestant myself at district level, I know how nerve-wracking it can actually be to stand in front of someone and deliver your speech. So as contest chair, make them feel comfortable, make them feel settled, make them feel grounded. And at the same time, put a lot of energy in what you're doing, because as Olga says, you want to try and make this fun and exciting for everybody else in the audience as well. So you're really there to set the tone of the particular contest as well. So I'd recommend energy. There's clearly opening formalities that we have to do as part of Toastmasters ceremonies. And of course, you know, we also have to sort of liaise with the chief judge as well, in terms of making sure that all the judges and everything else have been fully briefed as well. Now, what you might want to do as a contest chair, you might want to scan who's actually in the room. So if you've got members of Toastmasters royalty, like for example, we have Elizabeth here this evening, you might want to give Elizabeth a shout out and say hi. You might want to say hi to any other notable visitors as well in the particular audience. You can also, at this point, mention supporting functionaries. You can mention judges, but please, of course, do not use their names. They're meant to be anonymous, of course, because they absolutely know who they are. And, you know, you can start your welcome to the contestants by saying they're not just representing themselves, they're representing their clubs, their areas, their divisions. One of the lead-ins I used to do was, you know, District 71, 205 clubs, 5,000 members that could participate, 45 areas, 12 divisions, one contest, one winner. It's, you know, and you're going to find out who that winner is going to be today. Just create that little bit more excitement about exactly what's going on. And again, as you go into the formalities, check with the chief judge that all the judges have been fully briefed. Now, when you go into the formalities about starting off as contest chair and going through some of the rules and ceremonies, again, some of the things that Olga's already mentioned, you're going to have to repeat a little bit. So you're going to have to say the speaking order was determined during the briefing. You're going to have to share some of the contest rules. So you can say, yes, they're all in good standing. They're going to give a 5 to 7 minute speech, because in this particular example, we're talking about international speech at the International Convention, because that's where Olga wants to be, on that big stage. Now, of course, the subjects of the material has got to be selected by the contestant themselves. And another important thing is all quotes they have to be substantially original and attributed to somebody. So that there is that element, otherwise you could fall foul of disqualification. Equally, you have to mention the fact that, again, people know the timing of the speech and when to expect each of the lights. And another just reinforcement at this point, as again, as Olga's already said, it is from that first verbal or non-verbal cue that the timing actually starts. Now, when the speaker has finished, there is 1 minute of silence where the judges can attend to their particular ballots. Now, during that time, the second contestant or the next contestant can actually start to set up quietly their, if it's a virtual area, their virtual area, or if they're in person, set out any props, tools, or whatever else they're going to be using for that particular speech. Now, equally, again, if it's an online contest, there might be an element of a bit of Zoom etiquette like Cameron did today, you know, with regard to people being on mute and also turning off cameras and things like that. So also be very, very mindful of that. And in particular, what you don't want is people moving around on screen if they're having to keep their cameras on. Now, as I've said before, the interesting part is making that contestant feel really comfortable, really grounded, and really settled as they come to start their speech. And as I said, it can be quite a nerve-wracking experience. So the first thing I typically do, and I'm actually going to pick on a guest speaker in our room tonight. We actually have one of our chief judges, William Feek, who's going to be doing a speech for us this evening. Well, at least the first line of it, I think, anyway. So I'm just going to go through a bit of a routine of how I would introduce William and make sure he's ready for the get-go. So I would say our first speaker today is William Feek. And first of all, I say, William, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you, Nigel.
Yeah. And how are you feeling?
Apprehensive, as always.
Apprehensive. Okay. I just want to do a quick visual and sound check. Now I can hear you very clearly, William. I can see you. Are you happy with your virtual space and everything's to hand and everything's where you want it to be?
Yes, I'll just pin the timer. So.
Yes, please do pin the timer rather. And just give me a signal. Just take one deep breath and just let me know when you're ready to start. Okay. William Feek, with a speech entitled, My Dad's Wives, William Feek.
How many wives should a gentleman have had? Contest chair, ladies and gentlemen, if Oscar Wilde was a member of Toastmasters today, how would he have answered that question?
Thank you so much there, William. Thank you for that speech. And you would iterate that through all of the contestants you have on the day. You'd have that minute silence. Then after the final speaker, you'd ask the timer for 2 minutes silence while the judges put together their complete ballots for the contests. And then depending on whether it's in person or virtual, the judges and the ballot counters and the chief judge would go off and do their necessary bits and pieces. And what I want to do now, because the sort of the stressful part for the contestants is over, but the more interesting part, particularly for the contest chair, and importantly for the audience, is getting to know the speaker a little bit better. And for that, I just want to hand back to Olga to say, Olga, what comes next?
It's the interviews. I love this part. This is the best part because, as Nigel said, the contestant has done their bit. It's kind of like sort of the calm before the results, and you just want a little bit more. They want a little bit more time and share something about themselves, and it's just a really nice piece. So this is where I sort of channel my inner Graham Norton, or if you're from Ireland, my inner Gay Byrne. Hate them or love them, they do an amazing job, or did. So again, the most important thing you have to ask them, and I know the district are very, I think this is important to ask them what club, what area, and what division they are representing, because that's important. They've lots of people there today. The clubs are really proud of them, and they're proud of the clubs they've come from. So it's a nice little piece to include. Then you get to choose the question, and this is where you get it from. You can get it from the bio. I've always said to contestants ahead of time, put something interesting in there, funny if you want to talk about it. So I know, yeah, sometimes I've even gone out of that and I've had a bit of fun. So well, can you spotlight our Chief Judge, William Feek, again? And I'm going to run through a question with him, please.
You can de-spotlight me if you wish.
No, it's okay, you can stay. What's very important when you're a contest chair, because you're on screen all the time, is have a nice resting face. So don't look bored, don't be looking down, don't like, oh, the camera's on me. Always think you're on camera 24/7. Now, William, fabulous speech today. Really loved it. I have a question for you. Imagine this scenario. You're at the international convention in NASA and they say to you, you have a fabulous speech. And they turn to you and say, oh, we don't have a chief judge. What are you going to do? Are you going to go with the speech where you could possibly win or just maybe get to the semi-final stage? Are you going to go, oh, I just absolutely love being chief judge. I cannot turn this opportunity away. William.
Sorry, I'm slightly lost. I'm not a contestant anymore.
You are. You've made it to the regional semi-finals and you've got a fabulous speech. You're not too sure if it's good enough, but they offer you, they say, we've no chief judge for the absolute final. What are you going to do?
Well, as long as you've not read the rule book, I'd be more than happy to be the chief judge.
Great. So that's the plum roll then for you. Thank you, William. And that's the end of my interview. So now after this is when the results come. So during that interview stage, there's probably a lot of WhatsApp groups. There's a Toastmasters, there's various ones of them. So it's important to keep an eye on it because that's where the results will be posted in your particular group where the chief judge is. And just, I always say, read it, double check it, triple check it that you do it and get it right. Because if you get it wrong, I don't know if you can backtrack from that. So that's brilliant. So that's pretty much the interviews done and the results. So back over to my esteemed colleague, Nigel.
Thank you so much there, Olga. And realistically, the one thing you can do during the interview stage is to furnish the contestant with a participant certificate for taking part in the contest. And we come then, I think, to the important part, to the really important part, where you can be a bit of a game show host with this, which is the results. Now, you have to read the rule book very carefully on this, because even if there are only 3 contestants, you do have to do a 3, 2, 1 in reverse order. And therefore, you also need to prepare certificates for each of the contestants citing their place. It's always good to say, for example, if we were at club level or area level or division level, when the next contest is likely to be and how many people will represent that contest in the next contest level. So, for example, at some club level, because I think 4 clubs in an area, usually it's the first 2 that goes through, but again, possibly need to check the rule book on that. And make a real big thing about announcing the winner. Try and leave a bit of a pause in there before you say, and our winner today is, it's William Feek with a fantastic speech, My Dad's Wives, and really make something of it because it's really important for them. And I know that some clubs, some areas, some divisions, and I'm sure it happens at district, there are trophies and prizes and all sorts of other things that can also be shared. Really make it a celebratory event so that person feels as though they've earned something really great. Just noticed the red light. I think I'm going to stop here. Olga, is there a final comment from you at all?
No, just one important thing. You have to pay attention to the speeches. Of course, you should be doing that. So don't be distracted, because if there is a tech issue and they lose contact, it's up to the contest chair to let the contestant know the position of the speech so they're able to take up again. And I'm just seeing, is there anything else? Yeah, just enjoy it. It's a fabulous role. Sign up. So thank you. And back to Elizabeth.